Hello, Richik.
Hi.
A warm welcome to today's session, and I'm so looking forward to it. And what, you have already shed light on so many, aspects of being interviewer, interviewing techniques, etc. I have observed a very unique pattern. Like no matter which position it is, or which company it is, there are some very common questions which I have observed are asked across interviews. So today, should we talk about such questions which are very commonly asked, and I somehow feel that they are not asked just for the sake of it, but it's quite tricky, and the interviewer is probably expecting something while I or the candidate answer those questions. So should we talk about it today?
Absolutely. In fact, Ritu, before we get into specific questions, this is a big challenge, right? Because even the internet has all sorts of different ways to answer each question. So, before we getting into specific questions, I want to set one foundation right for all the listeners. And that is, if you want to enter into the interviewer's psyche, if you want to hack the interview, you have to remember one simple strategy, which I say WIIFM.
And
Okay.
what's that?
That basically means, and it's the secret for any effective communication, that when you're talking to someone, the only thing the person is hearing is what's in it for me,
Great.
right? So
Absolutely
I'll
right.
try to put some context to this. So usually interviewers are going to ask this question to you, that what kind of work culture do you like? Remember WIIFM. So he wants to hear that you like the work culture that is present in the company at which you're interviewing. But usually what people talk about is themselves. I want pays and perks. I want a very nice, work-life balance. I want that my achievements are appreciated. Breaking news: the company doesn't care what you want.
Right.
So if you're interviewing at Zomato, what the company would like to hear is that I'm a hustler, because
Right.
the culture is like that. So remember this. For any question, think about what the interview would like to hear and then answer. You can never go wrong.
Let me ask my very first question, Richik, which probably is asked no matter, which position, which office, which company. Probably, I have also faced this question at almost all the interviews in my life so far, which is tell me about yourself. Now, I know so many things about myself. What do I talk about?
Isn't it, right? And it's the first question, and it is so important because there is so much of scientific research that shows that the first 90 seconds of the interview are most critical, where 67% of hiring managers have already decided whether to hire the candidate or not, which simply means the way you answer this question, right? And like you pointed out, right, there are so many things, and usually people say myself, Richik, and these are my hobbies. I've grown up in this place. See, this is breaking the WIFM rule. The moment you realize that if you're going to frame this answer in terms of what the interviewer wants to hear, you can answer it so well. So now let me put some context to it. You know that the interviewer wants to hear only one thing, that these are the skills required in the JD, and you have those skills, right? So when the interviewer asks you, tell me about yourself, and for the purpose of this exercise, I'm going to say that the required skills are, say, Microsoft Excel, teamwork, and leadership. But these are just random examples. For you to be able to find out these skills, you have to read the job description and see which skills appear prominently, right? But let's go back. Say it is Microsoft Excel, teamwork, and leadership. Now imagine if I could answer this question this way. Hi, my name is Richik, and from childhood I have had an affinity for numbers. I learned Microsoft Excel very, very early in my life. In fact, in my previous role, if there was any question on Excel, the team used to come to me, and I created this macros, which was able to save the operational time of generating reports by 7 days. Another thing that's really interesting about me is that I love to work in a team. In fact, even in the previous work experience, apart from the professional front, people used to come to me. We had a very good teams, bonding. And I'd also say that I'm also very good in the leadership role. In fact, I was is elected as the youngest person to lead the team, and I was leading a team of 23, and we delivered 120% of our targets 3 years in a row.
Such an
So I really
interesting
feel
way.
that this makes me a fit candidate for the position that you're looking for, and I look forward to work here if I get a chance.
This is such an insightful answer, Richik, and such an interesting way to put the same boring information, maybe in that, and putting it in such a nice way. Really, really helpful. So, you're trying to say, I mean, the one word which you have given is what the person is interested in listening is probably something that's going to be my, guiding star from now on. So now, another question that the interviewer always asks, why do you want to work here? I mean, obviously, I want to work here. That's why I'm here. And I cannot say it's better pay or better perks for me. So how to answer it, to crack that interview?
Ritu, this is a trick question.
Yeah.
It's you. I mean, I don't. If you've seen, Phantom of the Opera or Krish's mask, right? So remember, the interviewer is wearing a mask. He's trying to hide his true intentions behind each question. So when he's asking you an innocent question like, "Why do you want to work here?" He's trying to gauge your true intention. What is important to you in a work culture? Why did you decide to interview at this company and not others? And indirectly, try to find out that your true intention or your true value system or the work culture that you like to work in, does it match the company's work culture? Right?
Okay.
So if you are going to answer this question, that why do I like to work here, is because Zomato is a multinational company and I want to work in a multinational company, you've missed the boat. What if you could say that, from childhood, this is one of the startups that I used to look up to, because, I see food delivery, I'm a big foodie. And, when I saw that this position has opened up, it really appealed to me. Not only that, one of the things that's standard about Zomato is the hustling work culture. And I feel that I'm in my point in my career where I want to hustle, I want to learn, I want to deliver, right? And which is why I feel that Zomato is the perfect place to work for me right now.
Okay, moving ahead, Richik, my next question is, which I'm sure everybody would have faced in all their interviews so far in life, that they ask us to talk about our strength and weaknesses. Now, there are so many strengths that I may have, and there are so many weaknesses that I may have. How do I choose to talk about, like, what should I highlight in my interview?
I love this question, right? So I'm going to take this in two parts. Let's talk about the strengths first, right? This is relatively easy. The only fair warning that I'd like to point out here is a lot of times people go astray and they talk about their strength, which is irrelevant to the job. So, for example, if you're applying for a software developer role, right, and you say that my biggest strength is social work or talking to people, and I love to talk to people, and I've done this and this, you're throwing the interviewer off because he expects you to say, my biggest strength is to sit down and code. So when you're answering the question, be intelligent and say your biggest strength is exactly what's required in the job, right? Now let's talk about weaknesses. Now this is a trick question, and because you are going to talk negative about yourself, people really tend to get thrown off. They get nervous, they get sweaty. Don't do that. First thing is to stay calm, right? And the other thing that people do is they try to disguise their strength as a weakness. My weakness is I'm such a perfectionist that I mean, come on. Like,
Yeah,
people understand. Interviewers are taking thousands of interviews in a month. They know when you're trying to, to say
right.
it in star mark, pull off, right? So now, instead, instead, why don't you be honest
Yeah.
and talk about a weakness that is completely irrelevant to the job? So let's go back to the same example. Say you're applying as a software developer.
Mm.
You definitely don't need to do public speaking. So could you not say that, one of my greatest weaknesses or one of my weaknesses is that I'm not comfortable doing public speaking?
Right.
You have been honest. The interviewer appreciates that. And it in no way affects your job because you'll never be doing public speaking.
Right.
And I'm going to give a hack here. If you can go one step further and show that you're working on it. So, for example, one of my biggest weaknesses is public speaking, but I have tried to work on it. I have joined the Toastmaster Society, and in fact, I'm taking part in a debate competition next month. So what you're doing is you're also showing the interviewer your quality of working on your weaknesses, of being proactive, of taking of wanting to improve. And that in his head, he's now thinking this is the guy I want to hire.
I think it's also will be helpful to have a list of our strengths and weaknesses already ready with us before we get into the interview as per the job description. So
No doubt. In fact, like I said, I give this example in the army that I am an army officer, so I am an infantry, so I fight on ground. But I always say this that infantry officers hate to admit it. But one of the major reasons why we won the Kargil war is because we had these amazing Bofors guns that were firing in the background.
right,
So the enemy couldn't raise their heads and it gave us the cover to approach. Otherwise, to go and capture a peak from climbing down, it's insane, right? Not to discount the work infantry has done.
yeah,
We are the best, but I'm just telling it as a story. So similarly, when you go for an interview, if you haven't done your research from beforehand, if you don't know what your strengths and weaknesses are, if your questions aren't rehearsed and practiced, you're going to find a hard time. You're going to fumble. You're going to beat around the bush. And that really is a turn off for the interview.
yeah. So there's one more question probably, which is again something that I find really, really tricky. And again, it's something that's asked very often in almost all the interviews is about our goals 5 years ahead. I mean, some people do not even have an idea what's going to happen after 6 months, especially post this COVID era. So, what are your goals and aspirations? Where do you see yourself after 5 years? I mean, what to say? Matlab, where should we stop our ambitions? Should we be over ambitious and say, I want to be the CEO? Or like, how should we? What's the ideal way to answer this question?
It's a really unfair question, honestly speaking. I do not like this question being asked because you're putting the candidate in a tight spot.
Yeah,
See, I'll tell you the reason why companies do ask this question. It's basically to check for red flags. Usually, candidates blurt out, I want to start my own company. Or
right,
even worse, they try to be, funny and say, I want to be sitting exactly where you are right now. There might be some online blogs that say this is a good answer. Trust me, it's not. It's really not because you're threatening the interviewer of his job. I mean, come on.
right.
Right? So instead, this is one of those questions where I would say that job seekers get smart. Obviously, the company is just looking at one thing: that do you have a long-term plan with the company? So you could say that in the next 5 years, I envision myself as a valuable member of this company who has contributed this, and looking forward to also earn the promotions as it goes. So when you answer in this frame, you are just reaffirming your commitment to the company. You want to work with them. You want to stay with them. Whether it's true or not is a different story. But in the interview, at least say it.
Oh, that is really, really helpful, Richik. And I think so far all these answers have been really insightful, simple, yet something that probably we do not think of that clearly. And I think one thing that was a great takeaway out of this session, apart from the insightful answers that you gave, was that it's better to be prepared for the interview. So these are some questions which are generally asked, and we know these are the questions which probably can be asked to us as well in the next interview. So it's always good to, have our own answers ready, rehearse them, practice them. And then I'm sure, I mean, it will probably be a much easier round of an interview.